Okafor protected me because he said he saw something in me. He wanted me to join his program, to join their army, to use my life for them. He put it this way.
I keep on telling you, people like us, there's no escape for the living.
People like us, there's no escape for the living. A phrase so pregnant with meaning, literally, as humans trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, and then more on the metaphorical side, meaning there is no escape for the humans that still have a soul, for the humans that still have a spirit. So, welcome back, everyone, and welcome to New Timers. This is Ingrid's Insights, the channel where I tease out meaning in TV, movies, and media. And today we're looking at the co-characters in The Ones Who Live and the roles that they played. Were they effective characters? Did we get well-rounded antagonists? Did we understand their motivations? Did we even care? So here's a little something about fair use. Under Section 107, Copyright Act 1976, this video falls under fair use and criticism, commenting, and teaching purposes. So I personally wanted to know more about most of the characters because they had such rich backstories for us to delve into. And just commenting on this particular clip at the beginning of the video, Okafor is one of my favorite antagonists, and for people like us statement suggests that he identifies with Rick, and I wish the writers would have explored that connection with the use of meaningful flashbacks. So what does he really mean by people like us? Okafor needed a visual story to show the man that he once was, the man who had a soul and a spirit, that same soul and spirit that was sucked out by the CRM. Okafor, like Rick, once had a wife that he loved. I think her name was Estelle. She was a Marine that Okafor killed for the CRM's principles. So I really do think we needed to see a bit of why this seemingly stand-up guy who wants to change the CRM killed his own wife. So this same guy who wants to change the CRM's Gestapo-like death squad to a military entity that actually protects the living. So Okafor's arc, in my opinion, lacked the backstory we needed to understand his motivations. There's another character, though, that appears in episode 2 titled Gone that shares this really great backstory through dialogue too, but this character arc works. And I asked myself, why did this character arc work? And the character I'm talking about is Nat. Why did this one work? I came to the conclusion that Nat, who is Michonne's sidekick, guide, in her hero's journey, was introduced with part of his backstory already in place, and that's the community that he was living in. That same community that survives by leaving people behind.
They leave people to die. Why do you stay with them?
I didn't like it before either. It was the same thing then, right? People were left to die.
Yeah, but it's not before anymore. I think you're all too smart not to find another way.
I guess we're surprisingly stupid, Michonne.
Or afraid.
This theme of not leaving people behind is a huge part of Nate's story arc. Nate intuitively and intrinsically does not want or is not okay with leaving people behind, which is evidenced by his deep anger and concern over Aiden and Bailey being left behind from the community leader, who was even the sister she was going to leave her sister behind. So we know that it's not in his nature to do so. But we can see in this scene, which is a really good scene, by the way, that he is struggling a little bit. He's bonded with Michonne. He likes Michonne. And he knows that this is a suicide mission for her to go off north looking for Rick. And then he and Bailey and Aiden and a crew of people who have decided to leave that community that leaves people behind go back and they rescue Michonne, or they essentially do not leave Michonne behind. Although Nate's character arc happens in episode 2, and Okafor's character arc happens all in episode 1, I think the slow burn of Nate's character arc and also his actual sincere and tangible connection to the community in which he lived and his interactions with Aiden and Bailey, they all tell a story about Nate and what kind of person he is. That's the interesting thing, that you have to have those other characters to play off of. And I do think that because they tell a story about you, right? Nate being the more important co-character, right? Whereas Okafor didn't have any other characters really to play off of except for Rick and Thorne, and he didn't really talk to Thorne very much. We know that Thorne, he attacked him, a shot at him or something, but that was never really clear to why that was an important piece of information. But I'm assuming because they mentioned it, that it was important, but I'm not sure what that means to tell us about Okafor, unless that information was used to suggest that Okafor was some sort of like highly compassionate man, or that he was on the lookout for A's and Thorne fit the bill, even though she tried to shoot at him and kill him. And I'm not sure. But I see that's the issue with not having some kind of visual representation in the terms of a flashback, or something like that. Or it could be dialogue, but it just has to be compelling and convincing. But in seeing that interaction maybe between Thorne and Okafor, that gives us a little bit of an insight into why that information about her shooting him was important. I know it seems like I'm belaboring the point, and I feel like it as I'm talking, but these are the nuances in writing scripts for television or for anything, for a movie, that you have to consider, because the characters' actions matter. So, so just thinking more about how Okafor and Nate really played similar parts in terms of preparing Rick and Michonne for the challenges that were going to come up next. So they really act as guides, and to a lesser degree, they act as antagonists at certain points. So Okafor prepared Rick, and he even told him, look, you need to stop wasting your life and do something with it. And for Okafor, that was Rick becoming an integral part of the CRM and changing the CRM, which I think still could happen. I still think that Rick could become an integral part of it and actually change it. We just didn't happen to see that in this series. So then there's Nate, who is preparing Michonne by, he gave her the armor, and then he also taught her about explosives and gave her some new weapons, and then also just offered moral support. So Okafor and Nate played similar parts in preparing these two heroes for the things that were going to come up next in their hero's journey. So Nate and Michonne are constants for each other through the healing process. After that, their entire group was bombed with a chlorine gas. They're there for each other in bonding, which is bonding them together, and to a greater extent, the audience. Basically, Nate's character is rounded out very well. We know Nate's motivation, and more importantly, we care. Nate even goes as far as to tell Michonne that he has nothing else when she suggests that he head back to Alexandria, and she goes on her way to continue to find Rick. And he says, no, absolutely not. I have nothing else. This is all that I have. Again, solidifying their connection together and the viewer's connection to Nate. We see how Okafor and Nate play similar roles for the two protagonists. Okafor and Nate provide safety, knowledge, wisdom, and a push for Rick and Michonne to surrender to their circumstances. Once both Rick and Michonne accept where they are, then by providence, they find each other. It kind of reminds me of that idea of in law of attraction when you put what you want out there and you just have this deep sense that it'll happen, and then you just let it go, you release it. I remember right before I met my ex-husband, I was going to the club and I'm like, I don't care if I meet anyone, doesn't matter to me. I'm just gonna go and have fun. And then of course I met one of the main loves of my life. So anyway, but by providence, they're reunited. And once they have their reunion, Okafor and Nate have completed their character arcs and both die on the same day. But not before imparting some final wisdom. Okafor tells Rick not to let it stick.
I still don't know how it's all going to work out, so I'll tell you one more secret. When you get to that point, swear on the sword. Don't hesitate. You'll know. Trust me. You'll know.
The swearing on the sword. This allowed Rick to know the precise moment to make the choice that Okafor didn't make. Then we see Nate, who fires the kill shot. The kill shot sets the wheels in motion for the Rick and Michonne's reunion. And also it sets in motion Okafor and Nate's completion of their story arcs. And they both die on the same day, which I've already said already, but that's all right. But not before they impart some important knowledge. Okafor lets Rick know that he shouldn't swear on the sword, but everything leading up to this point has prepared Rick the training, Okafor's story about his wife, Rick opening up to Okafor about his father. All of this has prepared him. Then in episode 2, we hear Nate's final bits of wisdom to Michonne.
Christ. Is that him?
Just going off the cuff here, and plus I need to be able to chop up this clip a little bit so that I can work towards monetization and not get it copyrighted. But anyway, seriously, when he said, Jesus Christ, is that him? And I just had this thought that, evoking Jesus Christ's name to me suggests miracles. And yes, it is a miracle. It is something amazing, a synchronicity that all of this just happened and they found each other again. All right, let's go.
He's not with them.
Well, how the hell?
Matt!
Is it still him? Can you tell?
I can't.
See,
You can still believe. And know when.
Nat in his dying breath makes sure that Michonne knows whether or not Rick is still him, which is a reoccurring idea throughout the series. Who is Rick? Who is Rick now? And Nat reminds Michonne that you can believe and know when it's time to leave a situation. So, like, we can relate that to our own lives, right? How many times have we in real life overstayed our welcome or stayed at a job or in a relationship when we knew we should have left sooner? Leaving and still believing aren't really mutually exclusive, right? You can leave, an example would be you could leave a marriage and still believe in love. And in Michonne's case, by the end of episode 3, she knew when it was time to leave. So check out my video on episode 3. So here, both Nate and Okafor complete their story arcs. And in the case of Nate, I really do feel like it felt complete. And in the case of Okafor, not so much. The actor was great. I just wanted to know more about him. I wanted to bond with that character, or I wanted to see that bond that he and Rick would have that Nate and Michonne had. And of course, it's different because Michonne is a female, and obviously they're different characters. But I feel like Okafor needed more. But what do y'all think? Do you think that's the case? I don't know. So I also wanted to include the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey chart. And we see once the hero or the heroine embarks on their adventure and crosses the threshold, the helpers come to assist. And the helpers, of course, being Okafor and Nate. I also thought that is something that was pretty interesting were the other elements, such as the brothers' battle, which reminded me of the fight between Okafor and Rick. And I know they weren't as close as brothers, but we could have seen more of that if we have gotten a more complete arc for Okafor. Then dismemberment, which we all know Rick cut off his left hand in episode 1 to flee the CRM. And then abduction, and of course Rick was abducted and forced to stay in the CRM. Then the night sea journey, which reminded me of, I believe it was episode 3 at the end, where Michonne threw them both into the water. And then I thought in terms of the metaphoric sense that perhaps the dragon battle was represented by Rick and Michonne's defeating the CRM and Major General Bill in episode 6, the finale. All right, so thank you so much for your time. If you've made it this far, I appreciate you and your time. Feel free, if you like what you've seen and heard, to subscribe and share and comment. Feedback is really important to me as I'm still really new to creating these videos. So any feedback is good feedback. The other thing is that this video was supposed to be about all of the tertiary characters or all of the co-characters and whether or not their story arcs worked. But then as I started, I realized that for me in particular, that would make the video too long and too complicated. So I just didn't want it to be too long. So keep a lookout for what's to come. The next video I'm going to be working on is about the women of the ones who live, and that's going to be Michonne, Jadis, and Thorne. Alrighty. Toodles. Thanks again. I really do work hard on these videos, so I would love if people would maybe donate a little bit to my channel via my PayPal. I would totally appreciate it because I'm not monetized. I don't have enough subscribers or watch hours, but every little bit helps. Thanks.